not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:30 on Tuesday, the 18th of April. This is To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Lots to get through this morning. Is the British economy bouncing back? The Chancellor says so, but will we see a difference in our pockets? This morning, we're going to ask one of Britain's top business minds, mobile phone tycoon John Caldwell.
We're also going to be talking about the arrest, breaking news, of the Scottish National Party treasurer. This follows, of course, 2 weeks ago, the arrest of the Scottish National Party chief executive, who just happened to be married to Nicola Sturgeon. Also, are you a snooker fan? I'm not, but I was outraged to see those Stop Oil protesters disrupting the tournament last night.
Yeah, outrageous. The Prime Minister faces this ethics investigation into his wife's financial interest. Rishi Sunak maintains that he declared the interest privately and correctly. But do you believe him?
And machetes and so-called zombie knives, they're going to be banned. Really? They've said that before, I'm sure. It follows a grandmother losing her grandson to knife crime, who's going to join us to talk about that in the programme.
Yeah, absolutely. And quiche, Your Majesty, we're going to be discussing the dish that King Charles wants us all eating at the coronation. Let us know your thoughts on all of that. GBViews at gbnews.uk is the email. As usual, we will get to as many of them as possible. But first of all, here are your news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thanks very much. Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 9:32. The Scottish National Party treasurer has been arrested following an investigation into party's finances. Police Scotland says 71-year-old Colin Beattie is in custody and is being questioned by detectives. It's after the party's accused of using more than £600,000 in donations meant for the independence referendum. It's the second arrest in relation to the inquiry, with the party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, being arrested and later released without charge earlier this month. The Energy Secretary's welcomed new rules banning all energy suppliers from forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of customers over the age of 85. The regulator Ofgem temporarily stopped the practice in February after it emerged a subcontractor used by British Gas was breaking into people's homes to fit them. Suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment. The UK's rate of unemployment has risen and job vacancies have fallen for the 9th month in a row. Data from the Office for National Statistics reveals the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. That's up from 3.7% in the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, job vacancies fell by 47,000 to 1.1 million in the 3 months to March. And pay has risen by 6.6%, but it's growing more slowly than inflation, so earnings are still falling in real terms. A government minister's defended Rishi Sunak, telling GBNews he doesn't think anyone doubts his integrity after a Parliament's ethics watchdog launched an investigation. Downing Street says the inquiry into the Prime Minister is over claims he failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a major measure announced in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify how it was declared as a ministerial interest rather than to the Commons. TV, online, radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Well, you've been hearing the breaking news, extraordinary development in Scotland. The treasurer of the Scottish National Party, he's called Colin Beattie. He's a doyen of the SNP. He's been arrested this morning. He's in police custody. He's being questioned by the police following this ongoing investigation into the party's finances.
That's right. It's Colin Beattie. He's 71 years old. He's in custody now. He's being questioned by detectives. We're going to bring you up to date as the show goes on.
And just so to remind you, 2 weeks ago, the chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, was arrested also. He happens to be Mr Nicola Sturgeon, who, of course, was the leader of the SNP and the First Minister, who resigned a few weeks ago. I think Bev Cushett didn't have anything left in her tank.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Bank account, maybe.
But I suspect the ongoing police investigation is going to form larger and larger. And, of course, we know the police have taken an interest in a large luxury camper van, which was parked outside Nicola Sturgeon's mother-in-law's house. And there's talk in the Scottish papers looking at jury too. So more on that throughout the programme. Now, spring is in the air after the wettest March on record, and the green shoots of economic recovery, are they beginning to show? I didn't write that, by the way.
Well, who better to discuss the economic weather than someone who left school early but built the mobile phone giant Phones Are You? Businessman John Caldwell joins us now. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, that isn't John. We're just waiting to... there you are, John. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. You know, we talk to politicians about the economy. They'll tell us what they want us to hear. We talk to economists. They have a very broad understanding of it. But you, as a businessman, bring a unique perspective to the situation at the moment. What's your assessment of where we are right now? Are we heading towards a deeper recession, or are we on the up?
Oh, gosh, you know, this is a complex question, really. I'll try and answer it briefly, but you can't do justice to that question briefly, because this all starts with the pandemic and Rishi putting too much money into the economy and causing problems without stimulating real job growth. And I launched at that time in March 2020 something that I called Caldwell Pandemic Recovery, to stimulate growth of the real economy by bringing in by incentivising businesses from all around the world to come to the UK in a special enterprise zone dedicated to the environment, because that will be one of the biggest exports that there's going to be in the next 10, 20 years. So we really, really needed to do that, and we've done nothing. Now, all that money that went into people's pockets has then, post-pandemic, kept the economy buoyant, but it's all with government borrowing, and that has to come from somewhere. So where we are at the moment is a very, very natural downturn that's only slight at the moment. And I am actually amazed at the robustness of the UK economy, because it is only a slight downturn, but was inevitable. I thought it would be a lot more severe than it is, because as that money that's running out in people's pockets which is also incidentally fueled inflation. As that runs out, then people are going to be spending less money and move us towards recession. But that really hasn't happened in line with my thinking.
What do you make of the size of the tax burden, though, John Caldwell? It's the highest tax burden in this country now since the Second World War. And we understand why taxes were so high after the war, but to rebuild Britain after 6 years of conflict.
Yeah, well, once again, a very complex question. But if you look at the major drivers of that, one is that we're nowhere near productive enough. Britain is a very unproductive society. You can only increase productivity by bringing on better, efficient means of producing things, or by working longer hours. That's not productivity per hour then, but it is productivity per person. So you either need to increase your hours or increase your efficiency, and we haven't done either of those things. In addition to that, then we've got a geriatric population, people who are way more people now who are past retirement age that we have to support. We've got a really improving health science, which enables people to live a lot longer. It enables illnesses to be treated whereas previously people would have died. And therefore, the burden on the health service is enormous. So, of course, then tax has to go up to keep up with that. But it's all to do with productivity. If we get the productivity up, then the percentage tax that we pay can remain low. And that's where we're failing as a country.
John, you're a self-made man. You work really hard from being 18 years old. We've just seen that you're in Monaco, so congratulations, lucky you. Wish we were in Monaco. You had a work ethic. We've got a whole generation now. We've got record numbers post-pandemic of employment-age individuals who are not in work. How do we get those people back to work? Because that's a fundamental problem. We've just heard about Mark Drayford in Wales trialling universal basic income in parts of the country, you know, the basic tenet of a communist socialist society. We've got to address that balance, haven't we, between the individual and the state?
Well, of course, it's a person's... If a person can survive on their pensions that they've earned during their lifetime or any wealth that they've created during their lifetime, it is, of course, their right to retire, as long as they're not a burden on the state. But the retirement age is ridiculously low. And this is the issue of the geriatric population, because when I was a kid, the average life expectancy for a male in Britain was 68 years old. If you're born today, the average life expectancy now is about 90. That means in the future we'll be carrying 24 years of pensionable age, whereas I only expected to live for 2 years past my pensionable age. So we have to address that as well. You know, there's a lot of great people out there that are in the 60, 65 plus, 70 plus, who could do a great job, but they're encouraged to retire by society, and we need to change that. And so maybe for healthy people, the state pension, well, I think definitely the state pension needs to be at an older age. We need to keep people working longer. That wouldn't be popular, of course, but we have to do something to get the balance of how many working people there are in the population and the number of people that we have to support into retirement.
John, can I push you on what Bev talked about there, the universal basic income? Because what the Welsh Government, the Labour Government, is proposing is giving young asylum seekers in Wales £1,600 a month, plus they'll also get legal aid to help them fight deportation. Is that an appropriate use of public money? They don't have to do anything for the money, by the way, at all. No work at all.
No, but this is politicians again, isn't it, Andrew? This is what they do. You know, they look for vote catching. Now, I'm fully supportive of asylum seekers in going through the correct channels, and I do think Britain has to take a proper and fair share of asylum seekers because that's the only humanitarian way to be. But also we do need to control immigration correctly. That money could have been used to try and stimulate those asylum seekers to find some useful job in Britain, and for them not to be asylum seekers fighting the government, but actually be patriated into Britain and put to useful work so that they're contributing to British society instead of being a drain on it.
I want to ask you about, as you built up Phones for You, mobile phone company, about this emergency alert that we're going to get on the 23rd of April? Is that this Sunday? No, I've lost. Yes, it is this Sunday. Where's the time going? 3 o'clock this Sunday. Mobile phones are all going to beep from the government telling us, be frightened, there may be imminent death nearby. Do you support this as somebody who's generated a huge amount of mobile phone sales over the years?
Well, I don't think my millions of mobile phones sales actually qualifies me to be any more knowledgeable on this than anybody else, because it's just a pure potential facility to save people's lives. Now, there are arguments against it, of course, because it's going to alert people to somebody's secret phone, and that secret phone might be there because of abuse or difficulties. So there are risks and challenges within that, but I think ultimately the statistics must speak for themselves. It's already been trialled in different countries around the world, and if it is genuinely saving lives and saving more lives than it jeopardizes, then it's a positive thing. And I believe people will be able to turn this alert off and turn the notification off, but of course that requires knowledge of how to do it. So I think we have to move forward in society to find ways of helping people, saving people's lives, saving them from catastrophic situations. But I remain to be convinced whether this is a particularly good idea and whether it will work.
Can I ask you this, John? We had on the programme last week somebody campaigning for mobile phones to be outlawed unless somebody is 16 or over. What age do you think is appropriate for someone to own their mobile phone?
Oh, gosh, I mean, you know, the trouble is that screen time for young children is very damaging to the young brain, especially 2-, 3- and 4-year-olds. So screen time, whether it's mobile phones or computer screens or television, should be limited, whatever the age. And I think after that, it's down to the parent. But of course, there is a safety aspect to a child having a mobile phone. So I think probably 10, 11 is a reasonable age. I think it's ridiculous to outlaw before 16, because we want our children to have mobile phones for security reasons as much as any other. And then, you know, there's a lot of intelligence and information that comes from mobile phones. All of us use them to research things that we don't know anything about, to widen our knowledge. So I don't think you can turn the clock back, but I don't also advocate kids, young or even teenagers, having too much screen time.
Very interesting coming from you. If I could ask you just one final question. I know you took in a family of Ukrainian refugees some time ago. I don't know if they're still with you and how things are, if they are.
They are with us, and they're in a lovely environment, and I think she's as happy as she can be, but she's living with her son in the grounds of my estate, and of course terrified for her country, her relatives, and her husband especially, who is in the forces. So, you know, it's really, really difficult, and she has regularly broken down in tears, I think, as you would, because she's terrified for everything that's going on. But she's got the best life that she can have under the circumstances, and so many people have done this around the UK, taking refugees, and I think it's a wonderful characteristic of the British people.
Very good. I'm glad she's happy as possible to be, John. Thanks for that. That's John Caldwell, the businessman. Lots of people, he's right, lots of people, Bev, we shouldn't forget, have taken in refugees, and they're still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they could be there for a long, long time, because that war's showing no sign of abating. Fascinating about John Caldwell, about when kids should have a phone.
Yeah, no.
Phone time limited.
That campaign that you're talking about, which is being run by Us for Them, and Miriam Cates MP and Catherine Burble-Singh, who is the strictest head teacher in the country. These are the women who are behind this campaign. And I think I am very much behind it as well. For under 16s, a smartphone, because the difficult thing is you take it off your kid and all the others have them, and then you're the bad mum. Whereas if we all join together and said we can't have them.
Yeah, we did say when they came on the programme last week, good luck trying to prise the phone off the kid.
You remember when we spoke to Catherine Burble-Singh about this?
It's brilliant.
I went and bought 2 Nokia bricks.
Well done,
and I've got them now, so that when they misbehave, they go with the Nokia brick, not the smartphone.
Now, we're going to talk about snooker, a sport neither Bev or I know anything about, but a stupid Just Stop Oil protester disrupted last night's World Snooker Championship in Sheffield by getting on the table and throwing orange powder.
That's right. In that very high carbon use sport of snooker, the second protester was dragged off another table at the same time, and the game was suspended.
Paul Coit is our fabulous sportsman, and he's here. Look, I don't know anything about snooker, and I think it's boring. But so
thanks very much.
Yeah, but for once,
Bev is wearing yellow. Though.
Yeah.
2 points for the yellow ball there.
Well, yes, so you get 2 points for yellow, don't you?
Yes, you do. Very good.
But look, what on earth has snooker got to do? How can they have got their clutches into that sport of all sorts? As Bev says, very carbon-conscious sport.
Well, the first thing is that they probably couldn't get tickets for the final. So this is very early on in the World Championships. So they probably think, right, how can we get tickets? And also, it's when they make their run as well. So it was Robert Milkins and Joe Perry, and
they
were snooker players, and Mark Allen and Fan Zheng Yi, which are on the other side.
Right.
So where they have it's the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield, which is where the World Championships have been for nearly 50 years. So what they do for the early rounds is that they have 2 tables, and then when you get further on, then you just have 1 table in the middle. So there's a big thing that separates the 2. Now, it wasn't only 1 protester because 2 came in at the same time. So the one guy comes in, jumps on the table, so you're probably about to see this, and then he jumps on the table with his little bag of orange powder. There he is there, jumps in the middle. That's just as the game had begun. So Robert Milkins was on 11 break there. He only just started. So it wasn't like they were sitting through a load of snooker before. They probably loved it as much as you do.
They don't know what that powder is. It could be a chemical.
Well, yes, but I mean, what do you do? What do you do in the situation? The thing is that
and you're whacking.
Well, there you go. But the thing is, their snooker cue, though, that's a prized possession. They don't change them over like tennis rackets. Wooden snooker cue, so you probably don't want to break your snooker cue. So you move out the way, as anybody would do. So they jump on the table. Then one is jumping on the table. The other one is trying to glue themselves to the table.
Oh, no.
Whereas it's one thing gluing yourself to paintings when nobody notices, but as soon as, I don't know how long this glue sets in, so probably you need about 2 or 3 minutes to actually have yourself set to the table. So they managed to get rid of her, and then it's a matter of cleaning up and then arresting the people.
Don't tell us why they chose snooker.
Well, I think it's just another sport. It's another sport which is on TV.
The crowd, I mean, I saw this clip when it broke first last night. The crowd were not happy.
Well, of course
all
not.
Shouting, get him off, booing him.
They presume had to go home.
Of
course.
They
paid the money for their tickets.
Did they then move the divider and continue to play on the one table?
Well, one table was... Well, that's it. One table, once everything had been done, is fine. The other one has obviously been ruined because you've got orange powder. Now, what they tried to do was someone comes out with a vacuum cleaner. They're just trying to clean. They're trying to sweep it off. Can you imagine actually playing on there and there's like little orange? Yeah, don't worry about that. It'll run fine. But I looked into this, and there actually is. There's a company, and the cloth is from a textile company in Gloucestershire. It's called Strachan No. 10. I know you've got some suits made out of that, Andrew. It's the same stuff. It's the championship cloth. So what they would then have to do is then recloth the table. Then that takes hours. That'll be ready. So
they're going to have to search everybody now who goes to a snooker tournament, aren't they, to make sure they're not got bags of tricks.
Well, what do you do? Can you search for someone with a bag of powder? I don't know.
I have to.
But the thing is that security as well.
Change the way we live in this country to have your bag searched going into a snooker event.
The sedate, dull sport of snooker disrupted by these dreadful men and women.
But is there a situation where snooker is not in the public eye as much as it was 20, 30 years ago? Everybody's now talking about snooker. Maybe, as crazy as it sounds, some people in snooker, we think people are looking at us now.
It's going to be a summer of absolute disruption and chaos because of these selfish lunatics who want to inflict all of their opinions on everybody else.
Let's hope not.
How many rounds do you have? How do you win a game of snooker, by the way?
What do you mean, how do you win? I could go on for ages. 15 reds, then you've got all the colours, and then whoever scores the most points, that would win the frame, and then it's different frames. Well, it all depends. It's different right the way up to the final, less early on.
Right. Well, Bev didn't know either.
OK.
Right, back to politics.
Lovely to see you, Paul.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Paul Coit.
OK, back to politics. Rishi Sunak will chair Cabinet this morning as the Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog launches an investigation into his family's financial ties.
So the Prime Minister's, the Labour Party are particularly jumping up and down about this because he didn't disclose in the MP's register of interest, just in the ministerial code, that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency which potentially could receive payments as a result of the latest budget.
So joining us now for more is GBNews' political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Good morning, Darren. Have we had any response from Rishi Sunak? It must be a case of wake up in the morning, put his head in his hands and go, something else I've got to deal with, which probably doesn't feel very important.
Yeah, and let's be honest about this, it's not the biggest scandal in the world, if we're going to be frank about it. Clearly, it's a distraction, though, for Rishi Sunak. As you say, Cabinet is underway this morning. Larry trying to get into number 10. This all relates to, as Andrew's just spelled out, from MP's point of view, not necessarily declaring that his wife had shares in this company that could, in future, because of changes to the budget, benefit from extra childcare provision from the government. If, and it is a big if, and Downing Street saying they're willing to cooperate with this inquiry, if the Commons Standards Commissioner finds against Rishi Sunak, I mean, the simple punishment is that he'll have to apologise and declare it to MPs. Keir Starmer, for example, has had to do that in the past when he's declared matters of interest a little late as well. So, as I say, in terms of the actual sanction, it's not the biggest scandal in the world, but you're right, Bev, is this what Rishi Sunak needs? No, frankly, it isn't. It's not what he needs because, not least of all, he's been trying to move himself and his party away from Conservative sleaze ever since he became Prime Minister, saying that was the previous mess, this is not mine. That's more difficult when it is clearly his mess. Second of all, we've got elections coming up in just a matter of a week's time, not ideal timing. And third of all, despite the headache today, I think a bigger one could be coming down the tracks, and that is the report into Dominic Raab and alleged bullying, which we're expecting to appear in the next couple of days.
Darren McCaffrey, that's our political editor in Downing Street. Thanks so much for joining us. Now,
do you know what? I think you summed that up yesterday when you were saying that the best bet that Labour have got is that there's some sort of scandal that Rishi Sunak falls into within the next 18 months before the election.
They're praying for it.
In some ways, he is kind of doing all right. Like I say that reluctantly, you know, I'm not his biggest fan.
Yeah. Because things look, the attack ads reeked of panic.
Exactly.
Because the polls are moving in the Tories' direction. His personal approval ratings are catching up with Starmer's very fast. So they are hope. So now they think if they chip away at his, it's not working. There
are questions about Rishi. So I have more questions, much more about whether his wife has got shares in a childcare company. I mean, the family are billionaires.
They are.
There are billionaires. And I think it was Eve Pollard said on Breakfast this morning, we don't know whether that particular firm makes a profit or not.
Well, we don't know how big her shareholding is. It could be £5.
That's right. The idea that he changed budgetary plan in order to give her a little bump in her shares in a childcare company.
Her own shareholding in her family's company, Infosys, we worked out on the Daily Mail, is around 780 million. She doesn't need a few quid.
She doesn't.
From a scheme which was lauded, by the way, in the budget to help get childcare for mums and dads, making it more accessible and more affordable.
Yeah.
And, of course, now what Labour are trying to do is do something on that parade, as they may say.
I have questions about Infosys, though, because that rolls out the world's biggest digital ID system in India.
That's Mrs. Murphy, that's Rishi Sunak's family firm.
So if we start talking about digital ID, I don't want any of that going to Infosys. You see what I mean? That's the stuff that I'm more interested in, not whether she has shares in a childcare.
And I said at breakfast, it's a storm in an egg cup, and a very small egg cup.
Right, still to come, the government is planning to ban all sales of machetes and so-called zombie knives.
That's next. Stay with Britain's News Channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Morning, it's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 18th of April. This is To The Point with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So SNP Treasurer Colin Beattie has been arrested by police investigating the party's funding and finances. Police Scotland say the 71-year-old is in custody and is being questioned by detectives.
That story's going to run and run, as they say. Snooker World Championship. This week we're going to be hearing in the programme from the demonstrator who disrupted the snooker last night, the woke warrior.
The Prime Minister faces an ethics investigation into his wife's financial interests. Rishi Sunak maintains that he declared the interest privately and correctly. But do you believe him?
I do, actually. And quiche, Your Majesty, we're going to discuss the dish King Charles wants us all eating at the coronation. And it's not chicken.
Let us know your thoughts on all of the above and everything else we're going to be talking about this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address, as always. But first of all, here are your news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you. Good morning from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 10. The SNP Treasurer has been arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to be questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours. Mr Murrell, who is the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was released without charge pending further investigation. Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told us it's time for change.
What we've seen is jaw-dropping, isn't it? And again, I think this shows you how the rot has set in with the SNP and their failures in the way in which they are running Scotland. And if the people of Scotland want to change of direction, which I think they actually do, I think it's pretty clear to me now that they need to come and support, and they will support, the Labour Party in Scotland as we rebuild across the country, because people are fed up of 13 years of Conservative rule and they're fed up of 13 years plus of SNP rule.
The Energy Secretary's welcomed new rules banning all energy suppliers from forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of customers over the age of 85. The regulator Ofgem temporarily stopped the practice in February after it emerged a subcontractor used by British Gas was breaking into people's homes to fit them. Suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment. The UK's rate of unemployment has risen and job vacancies have fallen for the 9th month in a row. Data from the Office for National Statistics reveals the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. That's up from 3.7% in the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, job vacancies fell by 47,000 to 1.1 million in the 3 months to March. And pay has risen by 6.6%, but it's growing more slowly than inflation, so earnings are still falling in real terms. The ONS says the uncertain economic outlook is holding industries back from recruiting. A government minister has defended Rishi Sunak, telling GB News he doesn't think anyone doubts his integrity after a Parliament's ethics watchdog launched an investigation. Downing Street says the inquiry into the Prime Minister is over claims he failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a major measure announced in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify how it was declared as a ministerial interest. Home Office Minister Chris Philp told GB News the Prime Minister is not hiding anything.
He has declared his interests as a minister in his cabinet office return, and he'll be working with the Commissioner to clear up any outstanding questions. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. And the announcement he was talking about to get more money into childcare, to provide free childcare for children up, I think, to the age of 4 and get more people to train as childminders, I think those are policies that all of us, to be honest, can get behind.
More machetes and zombie knives could be banned in England and Wales, with criminals who buy or sell them facing up to 2 years in jail. Under new plans, police could also be given more powers to seize and destroy weapons. The government says it hopes the plan will help make the communities safer. MPs are calling on the government to eliminate what they call the appalling racial disparity in maternal deaths. Research shows black women are almost 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy, childbirth and postpartum than white women. It also found the maternal mortality rate in the most deprived areas is increasing. The Women and Equalities Committee is warning the role of racism may have been overlooked and has called on the government to increase funding for maternity services. Meanwhile, the Health Department says the NHS is one of the safest places to give birth in the world. A leaked Network Rail presentation shows train delays will worsen over the next 5 years. The Independent newspaper says the current finding is not allowing Network Rail to operate, maintain and renew their infrastructure. The cost to repair the network will rise because the old infrastructure is being repaired rather than replaced with new. Rail bosses will also have to cut their £3 billion risk fund designed for emergencies like severe weather conditions to prioritise fixing the rail services. 2 Russian fighter jets and a spy plane have been intercepted by the RAF after flying close to NATO airspace. The aircraft were spotted flying over the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Finland. They were escorted through the Estonian Flight Information Region before being handed over to Swedish Air Force. Hundreds of military personnel have conducted the first rehearsal this morning for the King's coronation. They practiced the route on horseback in central London in the early hours of this morning to prepare for the event on the 6th of May. The coronation will see the largest military ceremonial operation in 70 years. More than 6,000 men and women of the UK's armed forces will be taking part in the historic royal event. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Well, a huge story in Scotland because the SNP Treasurer, Colin Beattie, has been arrested. He's being questioned by the police. I think we're going to go straight to our Scotland reporter to talk about that because he's in police custody. Tony Maguire Tony Maguire, this is sensational. Only 2 weeks after the Chief Executive, Peter Murrell, Mr Nicola Sturgeon, was arrested and questioned by the police. Now the Treasurer.
Indeed, yes, this is the story that will run and run. It's not even been 2 weeks since Peter Murrell was arrested, and that quite shocking scene outside the home he shares with Nicola Sturgeon, the big blue police tent. I'm sure we're all still discussing it at home, but certainly Colin Beattie this morning, Police Scotland put out a statement about an hour ago saying that 71-year-old man had been arrested. We now know that to be Colin Beattie. So Colin Beattie, he was the party treasurer between 2004 and 2020. Quite a long tenure, but certainly one would imagine with Operation Branch Form interested in that £600,000. Police Scotland will most likely be interested in the last 3 years of that time, about 2017, following the Scottish election, all the way through to 2020. And of course that magic number of £600,000, the centre of this police investigation. One would imagine that the questions that, you know, it could often be said that perhaps this won't even be the last arrest, but certainly with Police Scotland, we know that they are intent on questioning him. He is being questioned by detectives just now. Just to flashback, Peter Murrell, he was questioned by detectives for around 11 hours a couple of weeks ago, and certainly this story seems to be always developing. Now, Scottish Labour Deputy Leader Jackie Baillie has already come out and said that while this investigation spreads, the SNP is refusing to take basic steps of suspending MSPs. Obviously that's in reference to Nicola Sturgeon and various allegations that came out over the weekend around her relation to this police investigation. Now, Humza Yousaf, I'm outside Holyrood, as you mentioned. Humza Yousaf is supposed to be here today. Parliament is meant to reconvene today, and today he was expected to outline what his plans are for the next 3 years. But one must wonder when Humza Yousaf will actually next be the top story when it comes to us discussing the SNP.
All right, that's Tony Maguire, who is our reporter in Scotland. We get some political reaction now from Kevin Schofield from the Huff Post. Kevin, this guy has been a huge player in the SNP for years. Treasurer from 2004 to 2020. Then he was ousted for a year, but then came back for a couple of years. And I suspect the Treasurer who ousted him for a year cleared off because there's been real issues over transparency, over the finances of the SNP. This is a really serious development, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. The man who took over from him, he quit after just a year in post saying that he was not being given full access to the financial information that he needed to carry out his duties, which is obviously quite a significant comment when you look back on it now. But yeah, it's just another dramatic day in Scottish politics, another dramatic day for the SNP. As your correspondent there just mentioned, you know, it completely overshadows Humza Yousaf's big day in the Scottish Parliament. He was due to set out his programme for government for the next 3 years, taking Scotland up until the next Scottish elections in 2026. But yeah, that's not going to be the top story in Scotland by a long chalk now. It just looks so bad for the SNP, and clearly there is a lot more to come out, I think, in this investigation. The police have clearly got the bit between their teeth and are determined to investigate and interview as many high-profile SNP figures as possible to try and get to the bottom of it.
How will Humza Yousaf be dragged into this, do you think, Kevin? I mean, how does he cope with this speech today? Does he mention it? I presume not. And what are the longer-term implications going to be for him as the new leader of the SNP, with all of this rumbling on in the wings?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting about Humza Yousaf, of course, is that during the SNP leadership contest, he stressed the fact that he was the continuity candidate. He was Nicola Sturgeon's man. She never came out and publicly backed him, but lots of senior SNP figures who are close to her did. And now he's having to backtrack, obviously, because of all the controversy surrounding Nicola Sturgeon. He no longer wants to be associated with her, which is quite a U-turn over the previous few weeks. So yeah, it is very difficult for him, and it's just a complete distraction. You know, he's trying to, I think today the big announcements are going to be on taxation. They want to increase taxes on higher earners again in Scotland, and that's the message that he wants to put forward. But, you know, as long as this investigation is going on, and as long as senior SNP figures are being arrested by Police Scotland, then he's not going to be able to move away from this story. And it'll be very interesting to see what the next opinion polls in Scotland say, not just for the SNP's popularity, but also the whole issue of independence and whether this is harming that as well.
If I could ask you just finally, Kevin, the Treasurer who's been arrested and is being questioned by the police, he's also a serving member of the Scottish Parliament. He was elected in 2011. There's going to be huge pressure now for him to be suspended while this police investigation continues. And you could apply the same criteria to Peter Murrell as former Chief Executive. He's still a member of the SNP. Shouldn't his membership be suspended also?
Well, I think the attitude that the SNP are taking is that these guys are obviously innocent until proven otherwise. No one's been charged yet. It's important to stress that. Peter Murrell was interviewed for 11 hours, but released without charge pending further inquiries. The same applies at the moment to Colin Beattie. He's only assisting police and there's no charge or anything like that. I think were it to escalate, then I think the pressure would then come on the SNP to take steps. But even that would be hugely embarrassing if they were to suspend the former chief executive, and not just any chief executive. He was married to the former First Minister. I mean, it's an incredibly complicated and pretty murky story.
It certainly is. Kevin Schofield, thanks for joining us. He is, of course, the political editor of the HuffPost.
Now, criminals who buy and sell machetes, or so-called zombie knives, could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades. Under new rules, police would also be given more power to seize and destroy the weapons. Our political reporter Olivia Utley is in Westminster this morning. Good morning, Olivia. What has inspired this change and what does the government plan to do?
Good morning. Well, what's inspired this change is a slew of cases in recent months and years of people up in court, arrested, tried for carrying a machete, in some cases stabbing someone with a machete or one of these zombie knives. And the police have very little power to remove them unless, in the case of zombie knives, they have imagery or words suggesting that they're going to be used for violent purposes. Otherwise, the police must assume that they're being used for agricultural purposes, which of course in many cases they are not. Essentially what this is a loophole that the government is trying to close. The issue is that every Home Secretary since 2010 has promised to close this loophole. This is the fourth or fifth time that a Home Secretary has promised to do this, and yet somehow it always falls by the wayside. The problem that Labour have highlighted, and they're right to do so, is that it's going to take months until the consultation phase is complete. That's all that's happening now. And then legislation, which will obviously take months to go through. So it's an urgent change, which does need fixing. It's a nonsense loophole, but it's a long way, a bumpy road to get it completed, and it's not quite clear why.
Thank you, Olivia. Olivia Utley there. Let's speak now to Julie Taylor, an anti-knife crime campaigner, to get her thoughts. Good morning, Julie. You lost your grandson to knife crime. When you hear Olivia talking about the number of times these knives have tried, or the government have tried to ban them, and it doesn't happen, do you have any idea why?
No, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? They need a Cobra meeting. This is 10, 15 years too late. All right, they're going to start doing something now, but it's too late. We can't go weeks, not even days longer. Kids are dying every day on our streets because of these horrendous knives, and they've got to get their act together really quickly and sort this out.
Julie, I've been looking, 22 crimes a day involving these machetes. They're involving robberies, murder and rape. And there was a six-fold increase in these crimes last year alone.
It's terrible, isn't it? You know, nobody can fight a knife at all, whether it's 2 inches long or 20 inches long. We belong to so many groups, we campaign so much, there are so many, I lose the will with them, so many petitions out there, you know, stop this, ban this, do this. The Broad Police are doing their absolute best. They don't have enough power, you know. We go back to stop and search, take it away. No, don't stop it. Don't stop it. It's going to be even more carnage on the streets if you stop it. And the only reason that people are buying these hideous items are to maim, kill, like you say, rob. But it's usually there to really intimidate and to do real bad harm. So overnight, the whole of the internet is covered with what should we do? You know, they're double edged, they've got holes and they've got this and that. doesn't matter how big they are. Stop Amazon, for example. I looked on there last night, £25. Little Johnny, who's 12 years old, can borrow mum and dad's credit card. Perhaps mum and dad don't even know what they think he's bought roadblocks or something, I don't know. He can go and buy a knife. Stop selling them on knives. If we need knives, we can walk into a shop and buy them. We don't need all these imported ones or anything else. Stop it now.
Julie, what happened to you and your grandson?
What happened to us? Well, my grandson went to work and went out for a drink and just didn't come home. And while we sat in court, we've never known exactly what the knives were. They were described as zombie and Rambo knives. And until then, although you watch things like Rambo on the telly years ago, I had no idea what a knife was. So I constantly campaign. Every day of my life, I campaign. And I try to talk. I go into schools. I speak publicly. We've got to all work together to stop this. People work against each other for whatever reason that I don't know. So my whole family is destroyed because Liam's been gone just over 3 years. And at the time you think it can't get any worse, but it does. 3 years later, it's got worse and worse and worse. You know, my daughter is alcohol dependent. She has PTSD. My granddaughter is nearly 15. She weighs over 3 stone. She hasn't been to school for 3 years. She can't go out the house. She's absolutely terrified. So it's not just they buy these knives and kill somebody. You know, we're looking at the knives now. Now, even that tiny one should not be sold absolutely anywhere because these want-to-be little gangsters that think that they are so clever and, you know, they're hard and they belong to a gang. No, what they're not realising is that the gang members are recruited because they are the vulnerable children, the children that need help, the ones that are just, you know, are just roaming the streets at 10 o'clock at night. And where's mum and dad?
Yeah. Well, Julie, you do amazing work and we're happy to support your campaign anytime. We wish you all the best.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
joining us,
Thank you.
Julie Taylor.
I'm just looking at this. In 2016, Theresa May, the Home Secretary, announced a crackdown on Machete crime. Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, 2017. Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary, 2018. Priti Patel, Home Secretary, 2021. Ta-da! Suella Braverman in 2023. Don't do a consultation, ministers. Ban them. It's pretty simple. You get support across the Commons, support across the House. Don't need a consultation. They're lethal weapons in the hands of young men. 6-fold increase in crimes last year. 22 crimes a day with machetes. Sort it.
The idea that they're using them for agriculture.
Come on.
In Hackney?
And
I think not.
Brixton, I don't think so.
Right, Elon Musk's SpaceX Starship, which is considered the most powerful rocket to ever be launched into space, had to be delayed at 40 seconds to take off yesterday.
But why and for how long will the delay be? We're joined now by space and planetary scientist Andrew Loud. Andrew, I'd got the TV on. I was gripped. I've always been fascinated by space, the final frontier. What happened?
Good morning. Well, yes, it was one of those typical moments, isn't it, really, where you're waiting for it to happen and it sort of got held up. In this particular case, this is a test flight. This is the first test flight of the largest rocket ever built, the most powerful one ever constructed. And unfortunately, during fueling, where they're fueling up the hypercold materials, which is liquid methane, liquid oxygen, one of the valves froze up completely, which is something which has happened on many missions, strangely enough. It's a common issue that happens. And this is the reason why you do the test. And that means, of course, you can't fuel safely. And you have to have very strict safety regulations on these ones. And so, therefore, the countdown was stopped. In fact, it formally stopped 10 seconds before launch. And they did what was called a wet test, which means you fuel it as far as you can go, do everything you would do apart from launch it, so you get everything tested. And they will have to come back another day once they've checked that valve to see why that particular valve froze up. And it looks like they're going to do it again on Thursday afternoon, our time, around about 2:30.
Andy, do you think that we've lost that kind of fascination? Clearly, Andrew Pearce hasn't. I've just learnt something new. I didn't know about him. But do you think there's a whole generation of youngsters who see everything through the metaverse, everything's online, the virtual world? They might be like, well, what's the big deal? Why do we need to send rockets up into space?
I think you've made a very good point there, because what we've lost here is because everybody buys a bit of technology now and it's in a little black box and you shove it on the table or you just carry it in your pocket. They've lost that connection with physicality of doing things, and that's something we need to get back again. because I think one of the issues we have with people, if you like, wokeness or matters where people are very flippant about things, is they don't actually know what the real world is like, what the physicality is of it. And I do think we've lost that a bit. And I think space science can actually just give us that, like a rocket situation here, where it's a piece of engineering. It didn't launch because of something physical, real, went wrong. Not a piece of digital stuff, something physical. And I think this is where space science and space exploration could be really good for young people and bringing them into something that's actually practical and something that they can actually learn from. So I think you've got a good point there. And this is what happens a lot, whereas, why should we care? Because they get the images, they get the data, but they don't know the work that's gone behind it and the mechanics that have gone behind it to make things work. And I think that's a real problem we've got.
OK, Andy Lound, I've never spoken to a planetary scientist before, I don't think. Do come back into the studio with us one day and give us a little bit more of that, won't you? Inspire us all.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Right, still to come, food and drink prices continue to soar as the cost of living continues to bite. But how bad is it? We're going to be crunching the latest numbers with Liam in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Stupid thing.
Good morning. It's 10:26. You're with To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Now, cheese, bread and porridge have soared in price over the last year and everything else, according to the latest Which inflation figures.
So supermarket inflation rising, that hurts everybody, doesn't it? So we're asking, when will it end?
So let's cross over to Amanda Hodson now, the director of His Provision Food Bank. Good morning, Amanda. How bad is it for people at the moment, even to just get some basics that we've just listed there?
It's really hard, in fairness, and it's not just the things that you advised us of then. You know, even getting bread, and fruit and vegetables. You go into the supermarkets yourselves, I'm sure you have, and there's not a lot of variety, and the cost is soared, dramatically. A bag of potatoes, it's nearly gone up 50%. Bread has gone from £1 a loaf to nearly £1.75. Everything's gone up, and everybody's feeling the squeeze, and it doesn't matter where you are on the economy ladder. Everybody's being affected and having to cut their cloth accordingly, as they say.
Amanda, does this mean people are finding it more difficult to make donations to your food bank?
Yes, our donations have gone down, and because charities, there's more charities wanting to help. What we're getting isn't of the quality it was, and that's nobody's fault. We're all trying to help as many people as possible, but the amount of people we're wanting to help has gone up. And we have to then act accordingly to help people. And show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And provide the best possible produce. So that everybody can live and survive and become fruitful again.
Amanda, you used the phrase there that people are cutting their cloth accordingly. Do you think they are genuinely doing that? Are there some people, though, who have just come to rely on food banks for their weekly food and then will spend their money on something else?
My personal opinion is that, people are cutting their cloth accordingly. But the amount of people that we're now seeing is a different calibre of people. It's more the working class families. You can't just suddenly cut your cloth. You have to allow the time to do that. So if people are in contracts and, they've got mortgages, then they're the things that have to be looked after, the household essentials. So, if you're paying your mortgage or your rent, your gas, your electric, your council tax, your internet and your water, they've all gone up. So then what's left is what you've got left for food, and then that's got to stretch. I'm sure you've been into one of the leading supermarkets yourselves, and what you did your shop for £40 last year or the year before is getting you half of what it gets now.
Yeah, 100%. No doubt about it. Well, let's thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us.
I've really noticed it when you buy a loaf of bread, actually.
Yeah, totally. It is the basics. Well, let's get more from our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, is there some price gouging going on? This is the phrase you taught me, which is that some of these retailers are just taking the mickey out of us, and they're going, do you know what, everyone expects the prices to go up. Let's stick another 50p on a loaf of bread.
There's so much economic news around today. We've got public sector pay, private sector pay, unemployment, but it's right. Prepayment meters, it's right. We're going to focus on food inflation right now. There's a huge contrast between the fact that retail food prices are still going up faster than general inflation and wholesale food prices on global markets. They've come down, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Index, for 12 months in a row.
Well, doesn't that prove my point?
I think there is a lot of retailers, big retailers, who compete on some things, but they've got an awful lot of power to keep prices high. Let me give you some of the numbers from this really excellent Which survey. Right. 8 supermarkets across the UK, 26,000 different goods. So we all know that inflation, general inflation, is just above 10%, and tomorrow we're probably going to see it go down into double digits.
We hope so.
We hope so. That's the March number. But food price inflation is going in the other direction. According to this Which survey, in February it was 16.5% compared to 10% for general inflation. In March, on their survey, it was 17.2%.
And that's going to really affect poorer families.
Food price inflation is doing that. General inflation is doing that. And as you say, Andrew, the poor pay disproportionately for their food. So it affects them. Some numbers. A 50-gram porridge pot from Ocado, nice if you can afford it, up 66%.
Gosh.
An 800-gram sliced white loaf from Asda from 56 to 94 pence. That's a 67% rise. 8 sausages at Asda up 73%. 8 sausages at Tesco up, you guessed it, by 73%.
And what has the old age pension gone up?
Barely, by 10%. I mean, that is a big increase.
If you're on a
it's an inflation increase. If you're on a fixed income, it's really bad. And I think what we're going to see tomorrow, we're going to see confirmation in the official ONS numbers of headline inflation coming down, but food price inflation still going up. And as I say, I wrote about it in the Telegraph at the weekend. This is completely contrary to what's happening on wholesale markets. Now, we should say, of course, the big supermarkets deny this. Oh, we compete all
They're
the time.
a cartel.
They're the best. You can't use that word because they're not here to defend themselves.
I just did. You can defend them.
They obviously deny that because that would be illegal. But I'm pointing out the big disconnect in wholesale food prices doing that, retail food prices doing that, and that is bad news for ordinary people.
Just explain what that means, because some people may not know the difference between wholesale and retail.
So wholesale prices are on global markets, the price of grain on global markets, the price of meat on global markets, and national markets, by the way. Farm gate prices aren't elevated, so the supermarkets are clearly making a lot of money. Farm gate prices have actually come down. As any farmer watching or listening to GB News will tell you, we should be interviewing a lot more farmers. We should have a whole show dedicated to farming.
And haven't we had the same conversation about wholesale gas prices and oil prices falling, but what's going into our...
I think there's a lot of...
central heating and our cars.
Ingrained anti-competitiveness, even restrictive practices across a lot of different swathes of the British economy. I'd say energy markets, I'd say all kinds of retailing, particularly food retailing. I'm not naming individual companies here. What I am saying is broad trends. And the government should be all over this. And don't even get me started on the house builders.
Unless it's what they want. Yeah. Unless this is what Jeremy Hunt wants, which is to put more money in the hands of the corporations.
The price of food is possibly the most politically sensitive issue that you could possibly talk about, even more politically sensitive than the price of energy and the price of housing. And there's no way the government is going to want this. But the supermarket lobby is really, really powerful. Remember, during lockdown, the supermarkets had a monopoly. Because a lot of the corner shops had to close for some reason. And yet the supermarkets stayed open. And I think that in the end, we need more journalists to analyse this and start talking about it, because it is a really big deal.
Liam, keep fighting the good fight. Now, still to come, single-sex schools will be allowed to review transgender pupils under new education guidelines. Good. We'll tell you after news with Tamsin Roberts.
Andrew, thank you. It's 10:33. Here are the headlines. The SNP treasurer has been arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to be questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours. Mr Murrell, who is the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was released without charge pending further investigation. Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told us it's time for change. The Energy Secretaries welcome new rules banning all energy suppliers from forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of customers over the age of 85. The regulator Ofgem temporarily stopped the practice in February after it emerged a subcontractor used by British Gas was breaking into people's homes to fit them. Suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment. The UK's rate of unemployment has risen and job vacancies have fallen for the 9th month in a row. Data from the Office for National Statistics reveals the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. That's up from 3.7% in the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, job vacancies fell by 47,000 to 1.1 million in the 3 months to March. And pay has risen by 6.6%, but it's growing more slowly than inflation, so earnings are still falling in real terms. The ONS says the uncertain economic outlook is holding industries back from recruiting. A government minister has defended Rishi Sunak, telling GB News he doesn't think anyone doubts his integrity after a Parliament's ethics watchdog launched an investigation. Downing Street says the inquiry into the Prime Minister is over claims he failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a measure announced in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency, likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify how it was declared as a ministerial interest. TV, online, radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back to Bev and Andrew.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, first of all, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2433 and €1.1329. The price of gold is £1,611 and 33 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,898 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News, Investments That Matter.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10:40. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce. Right, time to go through some of the morning's top newspaper stories. Joining us is GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, as well as political commentator Tonya Buxton. Good morning, both.
Let's get him on that story that's come out of Wales today, because we think it's a bit bizarre. The Welsh Government is going to pay young asylum seekers £1,600 a month from of universal income to help them fight deportation, plus they'll also get legal aid. Flipping scandal, your lot in Wales.
Well,
flipping scandalous.
First of all, there's been a lot of people that have talked about the way that you might actually be able to help asylum seekers fund themselves. One of the problems, of course, of that is that they have then a stake in the country if they're then thrown out of it. When it comes to actually what the Welsh Government are leading the way in a number of areas on things like this. So, for instance, they've got a minimum income guarantee experiment going on where people are paid a set amount of money rather than get benefits. This seems to be another example of trying out something new. I think that we ought to try all these experiments. It doesn't mean it'll work.
People get on the old age pension.
But also, it's not really new. It's good old-fashioned communism, universal basic income. It's been proven not to work. It's
Well, it hasn't been proven not to work. I mean, I think there's a lot of problems with it. But universal basic income, especially post-pandemic, when we're trying to actually reset the economy, it is worth a try.
But all it means, Nigel, is that people are going to stay at home and do nothing. There are teenagers, if you offer them £1,600 a month to do nothing, they would snap your hand off, and there goes their motivation.
Exactly, it completely de-incentivises them to do anything. That's what it does. It's going to help breed this. This
Experiments have shown otherwise, that some people have gone and spent longer at university.
True life has shown it doesn't work.
But am I missing a point? Why are we giving asylum seekers who've contributed nothing to this country? Why are we giving £1,600 a month plus legal aid money to fight deportation? Why?
Well,
why are they being treated as special case when pensioners are struggling to heat their homes, Nigel?
No, I take the point about pensioners, but there is a question about whether or not asylum seekers should be able to support themselves while they're in Britain.
They're not supporting themselves. They're getting money from the state.
Well, I
Which
mean,
is broke.
Well, yes, but I mean, the state pays a lot of people like civil servants. I mean, they are...
But they work, allegedly.
They get a salary.
You're right there. They work allegedly, don't they?
But you've got teenagers, Tonya. If you said to them, you know what, guys, you don't have to go to work. You can watch Netflix, you can hang out with your mates, you can look at your phones all day, and the government are going to give you £400 a week.
Yeah. No.
What would it do to their psyche?
They would not move.
Yeah.
They would not move. They'd have no incentive to get up and do anything.
All these young men who land, is my view, as economic migrants in Dover and Kent, they're going to go straight to Wales because they're going to get £1,600. Thank you very much from the mad Welsh
I quite like that plan.
What, get rid of them from Kent?
Get rid of them from Kent, stick them in Wales.
What have Wales done to deserve it? It's a very nice country.
Well, they vote the wrong people in, don't they?
Well, I mean, Mark Drakeford he's standing down next year, but I guess he's doing all this before he goes.
Well, I mean,
trying to ruin the country like
as I said, that it's something that Wales has been experimenting with a number of things, and I think that's what we should be doing. We should be trying different ways of making things work, and that's one of the things that is happening in Wales.
I think we should find different ways of getting them out of the country, because a lot of them came here illegally.
Well, they didn't come... If there is asylum seeker, they didn't come illegally. They may become illegal migrants, but they're not illegal by crossing the channel.
But they're coming over not because they're asylum seekers from anything that's going to give them any harm. They're asylum seekers from France. Why don't they stay in Europe? They have to cross all of Europe to come to Britain. Yeah. Why doesn't that happen?
Macron's bad, but he's not that bad.
Well, yeah.
As a host.
It's true, but that's the problem I have. And then real asylum seekers that really are running away from some danger to their life and their children and their families, they're not getting through because...
But that is the point of the asylum system. You decide which is which. If you are just an economic migrant, you will be returned.
No, they won't be.
Well, they'll be returned if it's safe to return them to the country that they came from, and you can find out which country that was.
They rip up their papers.
Well, of course they do. That's why it takes some time to actually identify them. But we have trained people to go and do just that, to identify these people, and then they would be returned. If they're a genuine asylum seeker, they will then get asylum in this country. That's the point of the process.
Shouldn't it be a criminal act, though, to tear up your papers?
Yeah.
I think it should be a criminal act.
It is. When Suella Braverman describes them as illegal, what she's talking about is that they arrive in this country without any travel documents. So it's illegal to be in the country without travel documents. However, if they are an asylum seeker, that trumps anything about travel documents.
They're an economic migrant.
But they're not all economic migrants. There may be some amongst them.
Look at the age of them.
Some of them might be, but they're not all that. But that is the point of the asylum system, to then decide which ones have a genuine reason to be here and which don't.
Is this going to be the mindset if Labour win the election about asylum seekers? Open all hours, open all doors.
I don't think Labour would do that. What I do hope Labour will do is actually look at the asylum system properly, and the biggest change they could make is to end the requirement you have to be in this country before you can claim.
Yeah. I think this is relatively sensible.
Forever,
if you have a safe route for application, and then let us decide on a safer application route, on an application route which is safer than getting in a boat.
I still want them to get on a plane to Rwanda.
But I'm just not a big fan of the government handing out 1,400 quid a month to anyone, frankly. I don't care where you come from, if you just left school or whether you've arrived on a boat from Albania. Now, Nigel, let's talk about this. West faces an epoch-defining challenge from China. The UK security chiefs alert over the threat from China. What's this about?
Well, this is from Cindy Cameron, who's the head of the National Cybersecurity Centre. She's making a speech at a conference in Belfast. But what she's saying basically is that China is leaping ahead with technology, which could cause us problems. So therefore, we must try and keep up in this country. It's a bit of a plea for more money, obviously, because she wants to enhance her own little empire. But it's a serious point, is that China are doing a number of things that would be a threat to us. I think we don't treat China as an enemy, but we can't treat them as a friend either. And so she's absolutely right. We need to try and keep up with their technological advances. One of them that they're particularly worried about is China might develop a digital currency which they could use to avoid sanctions in the event that they invaded Taiwan.
Tanya, what worries me about this is when I hear our security chief saying we need to match China in terms of a surveillance state, they're getting ahead of us. I don't want to live in China. I don't want the same surveillance as we have in China.
And also, they're getting ahead of us is the wrong language.
Yes.
They have got ahead of us,
Yes.
and they have done for a very long time. By the time it makes the media and it's in the news, it's almost too late. We really do have to absolutely get on this, and we have to really start making sanctions about what they're getting into, our privacy, what the documents they can see, how they affect our children, the whole nudge unit that we all kind of came to the forefront with Laura Dodsworth's book, State of Fear, that we saw what the government were doing to us to give us fear. This is what China have been doing for a long time to make us buy things, to make our children think they need things. It's such a worry, but I think it might be too late.
Well, we got all upset, didn't we, about the big observation balloons that were flying across the United States.
Yes.
That were shot down because they were China. But that was just a distraction because we know they've been spying on us in all sorts of ways.
It's on our phones.
TikTok, Huawei phones.
I have to say, the balloons don't sound terribly high-tech to me.
Well, I think it was just a joke by the Chinese almost. And Joe Biden said, I'm going to shoot them down. And were they flying over British soil? Who cares?
It did seem a joke, didn't it? It didn't seem kind of like anything, because you have these satellites now, and they can do what they want.
Well,
so what were they doing flying balloons?
In space all around the world.
Thank you.
The whole of space is full of Chinese satellites spying on us right now. They're watching to the point.
Yeah, we
and
need
listening
to
the point.
Well, lucky
They're
them.
enjoying it.
Lucky them.
Yeah.
On this same sort of issue, actually, we've got this warning text coming this weekend where your phone is going to beep to tell you that you're in imminent danger, or possibly. Some people won't know what it is when it goes off at 3 o'clock on St George's Day. Some people will be genuinely frightened when their phone goes off and alerts them. I have a massive problem, Nigel, with the government tapping into my phone without my consent and warning me of something which is currently does not exist.
No, but what if it did?
But what could that be? What does that look like?
It could be a flood. It could be a flood. A flood. It could be a terrorist attack.
You think you'd realise that?
It could be a serious weather event. I mean, it might even be a minor earthquake or something like that.
Isn't that what the news is for, Nigel? Isn't that what we're here for?
24/7
Be on the
news
news. It's on 24/7.
24/7.
Why does it have to
Text,
come into our
emails.
home?
Yeah, but on the basis that if you are driving into an area which is a danger to life, where your life is threatened,
it's on the radio.
You would then
It's on the
get.
motorways.
Well, what if you don't have the radio on?
It's on the motorway
What you will
signs.
get is your warning text to tell you that there's trouble on
and
the
then
way.
you're scrabbling with your phone, which you shouldn't do when you're driving a car, which you should not.
I don't think you genuinely believe this, Nigel.
on the wheel.
Do you know what
It'll be in your
thing is?
pocket, Andrew, so
Can I
it'll
just
go
say
off and tell you there's an alert.
The one that worries me most is that there are women in domestic
absolutely right.
domestically
That's absolutely
violent
right.
relationships
That's a fair
where they've got
yeah, that's
phones
what-
hidden. They're their
They have.
lifeline phones,
Yeah.
just in case, because their partners take their phones, they take their laptops, they can't get out of the house, and they've got phones hidden away just in case it gets to the point where they need someone to come and save their lives. Now, those those alarms will be going off. The phone will go off whether it's on silent, whether it's switched off.
Yeah.
That is going to cause loss of life.
How many
And
women?
that's what
How many
really
women are
worries
going to
me.
be attacked because of it?
Because of it.
Can you
exactly.
think of an
Even one's
incident,
too many.
Nigel,
Yeah.
where your
Even
life
one's
has
too
been
many.
threatened that would have been saved by a beeping mobile phone from the government?
I think a terrorist incident. I mean, something like 7/7. If you knew that going down to the tube would be really dangerous.
We knew straight away.
No, we
Think about
didn't.
9/11. We watched George Bush receiving that information on the media. The media knew before the President of the United States knew.
The reason I'm thinking about 7/7 is that there's a lot we didn't know that day. I mean, I don't know where we all remember where we were, but originally, if you remember, we were told it was a power surge. In the event that you had an alert system like this, you could say, don't go down into the tube because there may be more bombs.
You know what's going to happen?
Know.
Do you know what it's going to do? You're going to see 50,000 YouTubers get a beep on their phone and run down with their phones to film the action. It's going to have the completely opposite
shouldn't do that. But Tonia's point is absolutely right about what happens to domestic abuse victims.
Able to answer that. No.
Well, no, I mean, the domestic violence charity Refuge is trying to put a guide out to actually disable this particular alert.
It's quite complicated.
That's why they're putting the guide out to help women like that who won't be in trouble.
Could be somebody in the 70s or 80s who's going to struggle to disable that phone.
Well, yes, all those things are possible, but the question really is it worth having the alert in the first place? So as you know
Because of an earthquake.
That's
the answer. It's a Nigel.
If one woman is attacked because of that phone alarm going off, that means it's not worth it. I'm sorry.
It
she
does.
might die.
Yeah, she's not going to die from an earthquake.
She might die.
And the chances are she's sat in a front room, she's not going to die from a terrorist attack. We aren't all in this. It's this awful regeneration of the idea that we should be frightened at all times, and it's damaging for mental health, particularly teenagers. Tonya, let's come to this story about teachers will not have to call children by their chosen pronouns under new official guidelines.
Hallelujah! Some sense is finally coming into education to schools. But you know what's really worrying, and I'm going to take us back a bit on this one, is that all of this trans stuff that's coming out that's infiltrated schools and the media and everything. Most of it was done on a study by a man called John Money. It was John Money's theory that came up with all of this, and he did one study on these twins. It ended up being a faulty study. He ended up being a child abuser, and yet what he said, his theory became doctrine. He was a tyrant during that time. Nobody could have posed him within any of the medical establishment, any of the publications. And it's so sinister the way that he's infiltrated in. He's been proved now to have been an abuser. He had mental health issues, and everything was done on this study. And this whole trans thing comes off the back of his theory. It's so faulty and it's so wrong. How has it managed to infiltrate our schools in this way to the point where we have to have the law has to come in and say, actually, if you've got boys' bits, you can't go to a girls' school. For goodness' sake.
We've got some guidance. Gillian Keegan is the education. Been under a lot of pressure because it's taken so long, but she's got there. Comprehensive girl, of course. It's common sense breaking out, isn't it?
It really is common sense breaking out. But how?
But will the teachers enforce it, or will they be?
There's such social pressure.
Yes, exactly.
There's such social pressure on people to do the right thing because, I mean, I grew up in the 80s with trans girlfriends. So I'm the least transphobic person on earth. But it's gone mad. There is insanity here. There is no common sense. There is no way that a person with male genitalia should be entering a girls' school.
Yeah, that's
no
right.
way.
No, I think that's right. So, I mean, I think that Andrew hit the nail on the head with that by saying this is common sense.
Yes, it is.
What is happening, I think, with the whole trans debate is that we really must take very, very careful steps as we go forward. But schools is a good example. I mean, quite clearly, if you have a single-sex school, you shouldn't be admitting somebody from the opposite sex, no matter how that sex was changed. So that is sensible. I know of a school where the pupils are really relaxed about somebody who trans from a boy to a girl, and they were perfectly happy about that. The only issue became with the girls who'd rather she didn't change in their area.
Right.
So they set up a different changing area. Again, common sense in the school. Everyone was happy, and everyone carried on perfectly normally.
I wonder if the Labour Party are going to get their head around, because they've been all over the place on this, Nigel.
Yeah, they have. No, I agree with that.
In Scotland, they supported Nicola Sturgeon's mad transgender bill, where if you're 15 and a half, 16, you can change your gender without even talking to a doctor. And Keir Starmer saying that 99.9% of women don't have a penis. No, women don't have a penis.
Well, no, I mean, Keir Starmer was right about that.
But that means 1 in 100 women
has got a problem over it.
That's ridiculous. That's not true.
Well,
it's just not true.
It is true if you go along with self-identity, and obviously it would be true under the Scottish legislation if it ever goes through.
1 in 100 women have changed their gender.
He was using the 99.99% figure as being an example of a small...
My point is, if you go back to where the transgender studies come and they are faulty and they are wrong, it should never have been allowed to have gone through.
I didn't even know about this guy.
So this is really interesting. I think this is what we need to do to get common sense back and to have understanding and have sympathy for the true people that are really suffering with being in the wrong body. We need to go back, look at these studies, and it needs to be started again. You need to wipe it clean. Common sense needs to come through.
And fair play to Gillian Keegan, the education.
And parents should be...
She's done the right thing here.
Yeah, she has.
Parents will be cheering this.
But parents must always be told, when it's their child, I'm a parent...
Unless there's harm to the child by doing so.
No, why would there be harm to the child?
Well, we don't know. I mean, if there was a parent who was particularly transphobic, there might be a danger to the child. But those are
rare.
It probably is very rare. Those are decisions teachers would have to make. I think parents as a whole would know anyway, and it is quite right that they should be told if they don't know, but the child's well-being should come first.
Somebody needs to tell Keir Starmer. He can just say, yes, there are women and there are trans women.
Yeah,
that's all he needs to say, and we're all happy. Right, coming up next, thanks both. You'll be back in just a moment, won't you? The situation for the SNP is going from bad to worse. We've got the latest, but first, here's the weather.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 18th of April. This is To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, more SNP turmoil. Now the party treasurer, Colin Beattie, is under arrest as part of the missing £600,000 investigation.
The story that just keeps giving. Snooker World Championship, snooker boy by oil protesters. I think we might be having a word with that man who chucked the orange powder on the what do they call it?
A baize. On the baize,
That's the word, thank you.
The shocking new report that reveals that black mothers are more likely to die in childbirth than white mothers. We'll find out why.
And Quiche, Your Majesty, we're going to discuss the dish that King Charles wants us all eating at the coronation. And clue, it's not chicken.
Keeps making me hungry, that picture of quiche.
Yeah.
Is it nearly lunchtime? It feels like it.
Not yet.
Let us know your thoughts on everything we're talking about this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address as usual. But first of all, here is your news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thanks very much and good morning from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 11. The SNP treasurer has been arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to be questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours. Mr Murrell, who is the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was released without charge pending further investigation. Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told us it's time for change.
What we've seen is jaw-dropping, isn't it? And again, I think this shows you how the rot has set in with the SNP and their failures in the way in which they are running Scotland. And if the people of Scotland want to change of direction, which I think they actually do, I think it's pretty clear to me now that they need to come and support, and they will support, the Labour Party in Scotland as we rebuild across the country, because people are fed up of 13 years of Conservative rule and they're fed up of 13 years plus of SNP rule.
The Energy Secretary's welcomed new rules banning energy suppliers from forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of customers over the age of 85. The regulator Ofgem temporarily stopped the practice in February after it emerged a subcontractor used by British Gas was breaking into people's homes to fit them. Suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment. The UK's rate of unemployment has risen and job vacancies have fallen for the 9th month in a row. Data from the Office for National Statistics reveals the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. That's up from 3.7% in the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, job vacancies fell by 47,000 to 1.1 million in the 3 months to March. And pay has risen by 6.6%, but it's growing more slowly than inflation, so earnings are still falling in real terms. The ONS says the uncertain economic outlook is holding industries back from recruiting. A government minister has defended Rishi Sunak, telling GB News he doesn't think anyone doubts his integrity after a Parliament's ethics watchdog launched an investigation. Downing Street says the inquiry into the Prime Minister is over claims he failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a measure announced in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify how it was declared as a ministerial interest. Home Office Minister Chris Philp told GB News the Prime Minister isn't hiding anything.
He has declared his interests as a minister in his Cabinet Office return, and he'll be working with the Commissioner to clear up any outstanding questions. But I don't think there's anything sinister here. And the announcement he was talking about to get more money into childcare, to provide free childcare for children up, I think, to the age of 4 and get more people to train as childminders, I think those are policies that all of us, to be honest, can get behind.
A US journalist is appealing against his detention in Russia on charges of espionage. Well, these are live pictures of the outside of the court in Moscow. Evan Kershkovich, who works for the Wall Street Journal, is accused of trying to obtain Russian military secrets on behalf of Washington, charges that carry a possible 20-year sentence. He's being held in pre-trial detention at a Moscow prison until at least the 29th of May. The newspaper says the charges are a vicious affront to a free press. President Joe Biden called his detention totally illegal. More machetes and zombie knives could be banned in England and Wales, with criminals who buy or sell them facing up to 2 years in jail. Under new plans, police could also be given more powers to seize and destroy weapons. The government says it hopes the plan will help make the communities feel safer. A leaked Network Rail presentation shows train delays will worsen over the next 5 years due to rising costs. The Independent newspaper reports the current funding isn't enough for Network Rail to operate, maintain and renew their infrastructure. It also blames old materials being repaired rather than replaced. Rail bosses say they've also had to cut their £3 billion risk fund designed for emergencies like severe weather conditions to prioritise fixing the rail services. 2 Russian fighter jets and a spy plane have been intercepted by the RAF after flying close to NATO airspace. The aircrafts were spotted flying over the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Finland. They were escorted through the Estonian flight path region before being handed over to the Swedish Air Force. Hundreds of military personnel have conducted the first rehearsal this morning for the King's coronation. They practiced the route on horseback in central London just after midnight to prepare for the event on the 6th of May. The coronation will see the largest military ceremonial operation in 70 years. More than 6,000 men and women of the UK's armed forces will be taking part in the historic royal event. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, it's 11:07 now. In the next few hours, the new First Minister for Scotland, Humza Yousaf, will make his first major policy announcement outlining his priorities for the next 3 years to the Scottish Parliament.
Or will he? Because, of course, he's been totally overshadowed by, guess what, a bombshell arrest in the inquiry into SNP's finances. Now it is the Treasurer who is being questioned by the police.
So joining us to discuss the latest is GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Good morning, Tony. Any news out of Scotland now? What do we know?
Good morning. Yes, well, I'm outside Holyrood. As you said, Humza Yousaf was supposed to relaunch himself and look ahead to the next 3 years, and that has been well and truly scuppered by this, the second arrest to be unveiled this morning, less than 2 weeks after Peter Murrell's very public arrest at his home in Glasgow. So we know now that this is, as I said, police operation branch form into the SNP's funding and finances. Just on Saturday there, Mr Beattie told the National Executive Committee of the SNP that he was having difficulty in balancing the books due to the reduction in donations and membership. So who is Colin Beattie? He certainly doesn't have the same tier of public profile as Nicola Sturgeon or Peter Murrell. Well, he's an MSP for Midlothian and Musselburgh, about 3 miles from where I am now. He served as party treasurer from 2004 to 2020. He had a year off where he was replaced by Douglas Chapman, but then resumed his role as treasurer in 2021. This is all, of course, over the £600,000 of donations which the SNP gathered between 2017 and 2020. But then by the end of 2019, one look at the books saw that there was less than £100,000 in the party war chest. And then this prompted the investigation. Now, adding to all this, of course, the video released over the weekend by the Sunday Mail showed Nicola Sturgeon in March 2021 saying that SNP party finances were in great health and that any concerns could obviously drive away potential donors. However, 3 months later, we now know that Peter Murrow gave a £107,000 loan to the SNP to help with party finances, and that, of course, would have all been under Mr. Beattie. So we know that all of these things, while seemingly coming out over a couple of weeks, they are all linked. And, you know, I might make some enemies saying this, but I'm starting to feel a little sorry for Humza Yousaf for this. His first few weeks as First Minister is certainly not going as planned.
All right, that's Tony Maguire, who says he's feeling a bit sorry for Humza Yousaf. I'm not. Humza Yousaf is the continuity candidate of the SNP. He was the candidate of Nicola Sturgeon, and I suspect that whole race was rushed forward to get it all out of the way before the police started feeling collars.
Oh, I think that's pretty much undoubted now, isn't it, as well? Yeah, I don't feel particularly sorry for him.
Don't feel sorry for him at all.
Not if he knew this was coming.
We know somebody probably doesn't feel sorry for him. That's Stuart Crawford, the political commentator and former SNP Big Cheese, Stuart Crawford. Stuart, morning. This is quite extraordinary now, isn't it? A second arrest, a major figure in the party. He's been the treasurer for a very long time, 1 year off. The other guy cleared off because he wasn't very happy about the finances. And, of course, he is a serving member of the Scottish Parliament as well, is the treasurer.
Yes, correct. Good morning. No dull days in Scotland at the moment, certainly not politically, although the weather, as you know, is not quite up to scratch. No, I mean, it is extraordinary. One hesitates to say what's going to come next. It's as if every day brings a different problem. And the arrest of Colin Beattie this morning has certainly rained on Humza Yousaf's parade. The day this afternoon, he's still due, as far as I'm aware, to set out his priorities for the next 3 years of his government, if indeed his government has another 3 years to go. And this has completely and utterly discombobulated the whole process. I don't feel sorry for Humza Yousaf, unlike your correspondent, Tony, because I think he's a fiercely ambitious politician. And he's working off somebody else's script, as far as I can see. I don't think he's his own man. Who's pulling the strings? I wouldn't venture to guess.
Stuart, at the weekend, the Sunday Mail broke a very important story. They got some footage of the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, lecturing and hectoring members of the National Executive Committee, saying, you don't need to worry about the money, the finances are fine. It seems to me she cowed them into silence, and that may include Colin Beattie, of course, who is the treasurer, cowed into silence.
Yes, I mean, I think that the internal party discipline of the SNP has been pretty fierce since the 2014 referendum. And, I mean, you said cowed. I would say there's an element of bullying going on there as well, where people are dependent on others in higher profile positions for their jobs and livelihoods. Interestingly, you should mention Douglas Chapman, who was the interim party treasurer for a very short period of time. And he resigned because he actually couldn't get access to the accounts for which he was meant to be responsible, and so couldn't sign off the audit. So there's a great deal of evidence of coercion and, as I say, bullying within the party, which has turned the whole atmosphere toxic.
It must be, so just quickly, Ben, a treasurer can't look at the accounts of the organisation he's meant to be auditing. Unprecedented.
Well, yes, I mean, you wouldn't let it happen at your local tennis club or bowling club, would you? So it's quite remarkable that it appears to have applied at a major political party in the UK. Time will tell.
Stuart, I'm interested in what you said then about Humza Yousaf and who might possibly be pulling his strings, and you said you couldn't possibly speculate, but have a go, indulge us. Who do you think is pulling his strings behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, you know, he's known as the continuity candidate. He seems to be quite happy to be the continuity candidate. And so I think that leads us in only one direction, really.
Nicola Sturgeon?
Possibly, or her inner cabal of advisors and colleagues.
He did say, didn't he, during the leadership campaign, rather foolishly in my view, that Nicola Sturgeon would be on speed dial.
Yes, well, you know, he's now hostage to fortune. What he needs to do if he wishes to continue as any sort of credible First Minister is draw a line under the whole affair, clear out the old guard, replace it with new people, trustworthy. Dare I say it, with people like Kate Forbes, who has a wide appeal in the Scottish electorate. and start from scratch. But I don't think he will. I don't think he is either in a position to do so, nor do I think he necessarily has the leadership qualities to do so.
So, in your opinion, then, Stuart, to some extent, Humza Yousaf is leading by, or Nicola Sturgeon is leading by proxy via Humza Yousaf. In an election, would you have rather seen, therefore, Kate Forbes? Do you think she would have a better chance of getting more votes for the SNP than Yousaf?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The polling indicated quite clearly that whilst Humza Yousaf, with the whole mechanism of the party machine behind him, managed to scrape through in a vote of the SNP membership to become party leader and First Minister, a poll of the wider electorate showed that Kate Forbes was far ahead in terms of popularity with the population of Scotland as a whole. But this is a mistake that all political parties make when electing a new leader. They look inwards rather than outwards, and the SNP has fallen into that trap again.
OK, former SNP member LT Stuart Crawford there. Thank you very much for joining us, Stuart.
Now it's to Rishi Sunak, so he's in the doghouse, certainly according to the Labour Party. He's chairing the Cabinet this morning. The Parliamentary Ethics Watchdog is looking into his family's financial ties, especially his wife.
That's right. He's facing accusations that he failed to disclose that his wife holds shares in a childcare agency who were given support in the budget. Well, let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, now. Good morning, Darren. Just to explain for people who might just be tuning in this morning, what's happened, what is he being accused of?
Well, we found out yesterday afternoon that he is going to be investigated by the Standards Commissioner, and this all seems to relate back to an appearance he made at the Liaison Committee last month, and about what he may well have declared to MPs. He was asked at the time whether there might be a conflict of interest around the idea that there's been quite significant changes to childcare provision in the budget announced by Jeremy Hunt that could benefit in future a company that his wife has got shares in. Now, the Prime Minister's response to that is that he has been open and he has declared it as a minister in the ministerial interests. Now, the problem for that is we had not had those ministerial interests published for a year or so, so that's not in the public domain, even if he has declared it. And there are questions about whether he should have done so as an MP as well. If it was as an MP, that would be in the public domain, as that's published a lot more regularly. The short and curlies of it all, if you like, is that he's under investigation. If he is found not to be open and frank, and that's the term the kind of law, if you like, leads down to, is that he's going to get a pretty minor sanction. He'll probably have to apologise and ensure that it is published in the proper way in future. So in terms of the kind of political row about this, the kind of details are it's not necessarily a massive deal. Politically a bit more tricky for the Prime Minister in the sense that he's trying to distance himself from kind of Conservative sleaze in the past. Yet again, here he is, marred in some of it himself. And second of all, we've got local elections coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. Again, I just don't think it buys into a good narrative for the Conservative Party. And Cabinet is kind of still meeting. They've been coming to and fro this morning. Also, I think the big thing they're waiting for is this report into Dominic Raab and these allegations of bullying. We're expecting that to come in the next couple of days. That could be a much bigger moment and a much trickier moment for the Prime Minister.
All right, that's Darren McCaffrey, our political editor in Downing Street. Dominic Raab, of course, the Justice Secretary. There was a report the other day that what was his name? Alex Sharma, who did...
Business.
No, COP. He did that environment, that environment thing we hosted in Scotland. What was it called? COP26, COP27. Well, apparently he's subject to now of bullying complaints because he rang 4 senior civil servants who are working from home and chivied them about their work rate. Good, that's your job, Minister. Yeah, it's not called bullying.
Right. Criminals who buy and sell machetes or so-called zombie knives could face longer jail sentences as the government moves to crack down on the blades.
Police are going to be given more power to seize and destroy the weapons. We've heard all this before, of course, so our political reporter Olivia Utley's in Westminster who can update us. Olivia, we've heard all this before, haven't we?
We have heard all of this before. The last 4 Home Secretaries have put legislation on the table, have discussed legislation to outlaw owning machetes and zombie knives, and nothing seems to have come of it. Essentially, this is just a loophole in the law which needs to be closed. If police find a machete or a zombie knife at the house of someone and they suspect them of planning to use that weapon to commit an offence, they are not able to seize the weapon under current laws, because there is no distinguishing feature in the law to distinguish between a machete and a zombie knife and an ordinary kitchen knife. Well, that is clearly a loophole that needs to be closed, and Labour are asking why hasn't it been done already, given this has been discussed pretty much once a year since 2010. Suella Braverman obviously now is taking the opportunity to crack down on this. It's good to show that the Tories are tough on crime as we get into local election, serious campaigning, looking forward to the next general election. But it might raise more questions than it answers, really, on why hasn't it been done already, and why is the process so long? At the moment, the plans that the Home Secretary is unveiling at the moment are out for consultation, public consultation. That's due to end in June, and only in June can any legislation actually be put on the table and then make its very slow, sedate way through Parliament. So we can expect it not to be until the end of this year, maybe next year, until we can actually see any change in the law, which, given this has been a subject of conversation since the Tories were elected in 2010, seems a bit bizarre.
Finlay, what makes us think this is going to happen any more than it did under Amber Rudd, Theresa May and the other 2 Home Secretaries who said they'd do something and didn't?
Well, exactly. I mean, it might be that there is more political will at the moment. There was an interesting case the other day where a judge who was sentencing someone who had stabbed someone using a machete asked the jury to write to their MPs to make this change in the law. So there is a bit of public interest in the case at the moment. And of course, Rishi Sunak is very determined, and Suella Braverman too, to show that the Tories are tough on crime. So perhaps there is more political will than there has been previously. But as you say, this is the 5th time this issue has been raised under a 5th Home Secretary. So you could understand why people might not believe that this is going to happen now any more than it happened under Amber Rudd, Theresa May, etc., who all, by the way, made pretty impassioned speeches about this in their time.
OK, thank you, Olivia. Thank you. Isn't it fascinating? Is it just that it's not the kind of thing that would affect the lives of MPs because they just don't live amongst gangs of teens who are around the street?
And this probably affects more Labour constituencies. Why aren't Labour MPs jumping up and down with fury?
Outrageous. Can't
4 Home Secretaries. Theresa May, when she was Home Secretary, for heaven's sake, was going to do it in 2016. Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, and Amber Rudd.
I'm just reading the majority of knife crime in London murders were committed with these knives, not with domestic knives that you cut your veggies with.
And they're not using them. And they're not using them for farming, are they?
Brutal machete knives.
Can we be serious? How many farms have you seen in a London and in a Birmingham?
Still to come. MPs are warning that racism is playing a major role in the appalling disparity in maternal deaths.
Covering that in detail on GB News, which is, of course, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
News Radio.
It's 11:26 with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner here on GB News. This is To The Point, and we've got lots of points coming in.
We haven't got to many of your messages so far this morning. We're very sorry we've had such a busy show. We were talking earlier about this Just Stop Oil protest. Don't know whether you're watching the snooker last night.
Infuriating.
Idiots just causing chaos, thinking we have to live in the way that they want us to live. It drives me mad. Well, Paul in County Antrim has said, I'd find out where Just Stop Oil work and I would go in and disrupt their day. This is how the snooker players make a living.
I suspect they're sat on their sofas plotting their latest juvenile stunts. I don't think any of them work, Paul, at all, because I think quite a lot of them have got privileged backgrounds, haven't they? So the bank of mum and dad supports them. Jan says, I bet these protesters would not dare to try to halt a football match. The fans would quickly sort them out.
I did think that yesterday when all of the crowd at the snooker were starting screaming and shouting and booing them. I was thinking, one of you get up and...
pull them off the table.
Yeah.
But then they'd probably been arrested.
Maybe. Carol says, spoilt kids with nothing to do, and if they were jailed for 28 days as punishment, they'd have criminal records no less than they deserve. And if they have jobs, perhaps they'll get sacked. Why aren't they punished?
And here's the thing, all those dreadful people who tried to disrupt the Grand National on Saturday, so they were arrested, they were then de-arrested.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it means they're free to go to... Well, they may have been at the snooker. It means no action taken against them. Why?
Well, why? This is the thing. There is all this sort of theory, isn't there, that a lot of these protests are in order to, and this, you know, I don't know whether this is true or not, in order to help the government push through rules around protest, clamping down on protests. We had the act sort of on the back of COVID, didn't we, about the protests? What's it called? I can't remember. It slipped my mind. About the fact that that we're limiting the rights of people to protest freely and cause disruption. Do you remember that?
I do. But the thing is, on the one hand, you want them to, but on the other hand, you don't want to interfere with people's civil liberties. But when you saw those protesters who were on a road and they were bringing them drinks, the police, bringing them sunblock.
Yeah. Then
Hello.
you start to think,
I mean, whose side are they on? There's still these messages still going. Susan says they're generating fear and creating mayhem. They're doing nothing to promote their cause. They must be stopped. Actually, they damage their cause, and both you and I support the fact that we've got to do something, but that is not the way.
Well, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure. I don't support the Just Stop Oil protesters.
Never. Don't support anything they're doing.
At all. I want a cleaner planet.
Or Extinction Rebellion.
Water. I don't support them. I don't. But I know that they have some good... I presume they have some good ambition. I'm not sure it's about their ambition. They've got
But snooker, Bev, snooker, people have paid good money to go and get into that stadium at Sheffield. I don't know what you pay, probably a couple of £100. They lost their evening's entertainment. They go home, they don't get their money back. And Just Stop Oil are infuriating.
That's right. So just a little while ago, actually, our very own Patrick Christie's interviewed the Joker that was on the table last night at the snooker.
He did.
Let's have a look.
I am just keen to know, what do you want to do after university? What's your big ambition? What kind of line of work are you going to go into?
My dream is to be a writer, but any vocation, any dream is looking precarious if we don't sort out the climate crisis.
So are you genuinely so fearful that the world is going to end within your lifetime that you don't care about, particularly about future employment prospects or anything like that? You are just so convinced that you're going to see the end of the world?
Well, I already have decided that I won't be having children because I can't guarantee that there will be a habitable planet for them to grow up into.
OK, is that a difficult decision for you? I mean, that's quite a bold decision to make, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the moral choice, given the circumstances that we're facing.
So morally, you think it would be wrong to bring more children into this world?
If we don't sort out the climate crisis.
Wow,
Yeah,
that was
well,
Eddie Whittingham
particularly if the children turn out like him.
Well, I can't help but think
Sorry.
it's a bit of Darwinism. I mean, I just see a man who has not got any idea what he's doing.
At university, supported by the taxpayer.
Yeah.
At vast amounts of money.
Have you heard Peter Hitchens talking about this issue?
Yeah.
And Peter Hitchens, a male columnist, is really interesting about the fact that, just stay with me here, the demise of religion has left some people wanting to feel like a good human being, whereby they used to get that from Christianity in this country, let's say. And so now they need to prove how good they are, and so they do this kind of thing, and it overcomes them and their whole personality.
It ticks a box. It's their social conscience.
And when
They're doing good.
Yeah, and when I hear Eddie Whittingham there talking like that, I think, you know what? Go and get another hobby. Feel good about yourself somewhere else. Don't ruin everyone else's lives.
Get on with your studies, mate.
Go and work in environment. Go and work in the area. Do something.
Yeah, work in charity.
Anyway, Eddie, if you want
And they
to, you can have that advice.
and they owe an apology, frankly, to those people who were watching the tournament, either on television or in the stadium, in the, what do they call it? Not a stadium, is it?
Well, it's
the
in the
pavilion
Crucible,
or the Crucible,
isn't it?
yeah,
In
theatre.
Sheffield.
It's a theatre, isn't it? I've been to the theatre, actually. Look, I can't stand snooker, but it's just willful, wanton, selfish destruction.
And like I said earlier, I think we're going to have a whole summer of it. If we're not careful, there's going to be everything, isn't there?
Wonder if they will pick a football match. Good luck with that. Particularly go to Millwall.
Right, still to come. The economy is apparently growing. We're going to tell you by how much after your morning's news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you. It's 11:32. Here are the headlines. The SNP treasurer has been arrested by police investigating the party's finances. Colin Beattie is the second person to be questioned by detectives who are trying to establish how more than £600,000 in donations set aside for an independence referendum had been used. Earlier this month, the Scottish National Party's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, was questioned for more than 11 hours. Mr Murrell, who is the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, was released without charge pending further investigation. The Energy Secretaries welcomed new rules banning all energy suppliers from forcibly installing prepayment meters in the homes of customers over the age of 85. The regulator Ofgem temporarily stopped the practice in February after it emerged a subcontractor used by British Gas was breaking into people's homes to fit them. Suppliers across England, Scotland and Wales have agreed to a new code of practice to protect vulnerable customers. Under new rules, technicians will also be required to wear body cameras and audio equipment. The Home Office Minister has told GB News the Prime Minister has nothing to hide. Parliament's ethics watchdog is investigating whether Rishi Sunak failed to tell MPs his wife might benefit from a major announcement in last month's budget. She holds shares in Koru Kids, a childcare agency likely to gain financially from a drive to recruit more childminders. Number 10 says Mr Sunak will clarify why it was declared as a ministerial interest. The UK's rate of unemployment has risen and job vacancies have fallen for the 9th month in a row. Data from the Office for National Statistics reveals the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in the 3 months to February. That's up from 3.7% in the previous 3 months. Meanwhile, job vacancies fell by 47,000 to 1.1 million in the 3 months to March. And pay has risen by 6.6%, but it's growing more slowly than inflation, so earnings are still falling in real terms. The ONS says the uncertain economic outlook is holding industries back from recruiting. TV, online radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2428 and €1.1324. The price of gold is £1,610 and 61 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,898 points.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, stop chatting, you lot. It's 11:38. You're always to the point on GB News. We've got Nigel Nelson with us and Tonya Buxton. Good morning, both.
Good morning.
Oh, we fitted a lot in during that break.
We did.
Yeah,
And
right.
by the way, Tonya's bought another cake.
I did.
She is a great baker.
I am.
The Easter cake last week was sensational.
Flona.
Part savoury too.
Yes, it was.
And it was a special
It was
Orthodox
a
cake.
Cypriot Greek Easter cake.
And I shared it with a colleague who said that's the best Turkish cake. I said, oh no, not Turkey.
No, that's very Cypriot, actually. So it could be Turkish Cypriot. I don't know if Turkish Cypriot's too, but it's Cypriot, it's Greek.
So banana and chocolate muffins today.
Yes.
Which I was eating in the break and she just looked at me, she went, do not get that chocolate on your dress. I do not want to be responsible for that.
So, Tonya, you can come every week.
Thanks.
Right, OK, what do you want to talk about, guys? Should we talk about these efforts to create a male contraceptive pill given a boost by a genetic switch? A male contraceptive pill. I'm not sure I'd trust it, Nigel.
I was just about to say, what woman would trust that?
Well, there's always
that, but I suppose that contraception should be as much for the man as the woman.
Couldn't agree more.
So what this seems to do is basically stop the sperm swimming around, and then when you stop taking it, everything returns to normal again. I mean, the question really, obviously, is would you trust taking another pill? There's been problems with the previous one. I don't need to because I've had 5 children, found out what was causing it and had the snip.
Right.
The best way round.
And I don't have a skin in this game either, for obvious reasons. So let's ask you, Tonya, would you trust a bloke?
It's not that I wouldn't trust a bloke, because it depends on the bloke. I personally don't trust this type of medication. I wouldn't want my sons to take this type of medication. Because what it does, it deforms, allegedly temporarily deforms the sperm.
Right.
And they say that as soon as you stop taking this pill, your sperm returns to normal. But how do you know that?
Yeah.
How would you know that? And I think we lots of things are coming out about the female contraceptive pill that we didn't know enough of then. And so I wouldn't want my sons to take this. And also, let's be honest, men don't have the jeopardy, because if you know, if it doesn't work, exactly,
they don't get pregnant.
So no, I wouldn't trust a guy to take it either. But I just don't like this messing about with hormones. I don't like that.
Can you imagine your misspent youth, Nigel? That's a long time ago, of course. Would you have? How do you think you would have approached the idea of the male contraceptive?
I'd have gone with that, actually.
Would you?
Yeah. In fact, I would probably have been happier knowing I was doing that than the other way around.
I guess the worry is, though, we want particularly people who aren't in relationships to be using condom protection.
Yes.
Yeah, because that protects you against all the other stuff.
Pregnancy is only one of the issues facing the youngsters.
Sexual infection, sexual... what are they called? The
STIs.
Are soaring.
That's right. And I slightly worry that, you know what, the girls say, I'm on the pill, it's fine. The bloke says, I'm on the pill, it's fine. And then, guess what? There could be gonorrhea and herpes and...
chlamydia and all the rest.
Which affect your fertility long term. Right, I think we've sorted that one out, haven't we? Right. Tonya, criticism of a Bud Light partnership with transgender influence Dylan Mulvaney has continued despite
I'm so pleased about this.
So am I. What's the saying? Go woke, go broke?
Absolutely right.
So what they've done now, what Bud has done now, it's a Belgian company, actually, Anheuser-Busch, has now decided to use these big Clydesdale horses going through the American heartline, and it's their tagline is, it's bigger than beer, it's the American spirit, and there's stars and stripes, and, you know, they've taken it all the way back to the kind of all-American beer drinking
Because remind people what they did do to try and attract a new audience.
They put a transgender person in, and they did it on their Bud Light, so and it's aimed at women. This particular kind of zero alcohol beer, kind of zero calorie beer, was aimed at women, and they decided to use a transgender woman to do it. And this particular transgender woman offends me because I am very girly. You'll know that I am a real girl's girl, and I don't flounce around and do all of this. I never did all of that. It feels like it's a caricature. It's a Mickey take of what it is to be a woman. This transgender person is not being a woman. It's being an
impression of a woman.
An impression, but a caricaturist, a parody of a woman, and that's why I found it so offensive as well.
And there was a backlash, and it hit sales.
It hit sales. Sales went all the way down to the floor. And now what are they doing? They're doing the all-American Bud
I don't think people should fall for it. They
Well,
should boycott
it seems to me it just shows an element of self-awareness there, something the Labour Party could actually learn from. Because on the basis of this, they did the first ad. I wasn't offended by the first ad, but it was controversial. So they've now done an all-American kind of ad campaign in its stead. But what it means is that you're appealing to both sides. And I think that if Keir Starmer had not doubled down on his attacks on Rishi Sunak over child abuse, he would have been a much bigger man to have done that and then say, look, we made a mistake, and do a different campaign. This is what Budweiser are effectively saying.
They're doing, because they know they got it wrong.
But why do you think it's controversial? Don't you just think it's wrong trying to sell something that is for women by a transgender woman when there are women that could do this job?
Yeah.
But what is wrong with a transgender woman doing the job?
Well, when they're doing it in a parody
Because that was the point. It was a parody of how a woman...
No, I take that. But that's why I didn't find that offensive. I found it an interesting ad to watch.
I just thought it was stupid.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
You see, he's also... Dylan Mulvaney, this transgender woman, previously a male, also had a Nike fitness outfit campaign recently. you know, she was paid to promote female sports uniform for the female sex, sports outfit.
Bras for runners.
And he has no boobs. And so that for us as women, we're looking and we're going, your product is meant to work for our bodies. Why are you putting it on a male frame and thinking we're stupid enough to buy that?
But on top of
point taken on that
and also
one.
at a time when they are saying in international sport increasingly, no, a trans woman cannot compete with women.
Yeah, no, I take that point.
But the main thing for me is that when it comes to funding of many things, women get such a small wedge of the huge amount of money that there is in advertising. In sport in particular, they get 1%. And then to take that 1% and give it to a transgender woman who's parodying women is so offensive to me as a woman, and it's so offensive to me as a mother of daughters who my daughters might want to become sportswomen. And they're being eked out.
You know what the danger is as well for these brands that align themselves with trans people? They cannot win, because what they've now done, by hiring Dylan and then dropping Dylan, they will have now alienated the trans community, who can be some of the most politically activated people.
Just ask J.K. Rowling.
Not so much dropping her. What they're doing is they're just extending their campaign and going in a different direction.
You won't see that ad again.
That's not how the trans activists will see it.
You will not see that ad again. Do you think, Tonya, you won't see that ad again?
I don't think you will, because it boils down to money.
Exactly, it hit them financially.
And that's what the trans activists will say. They will say, you should have doubled down, you should have, if you really did believe in our cause, you should have backed Dylan and you should have doubled down on those particular advertising rather than going the other way. So you kind of can't win with it. And do you know what the sad thing is? There will be genuinely trans people who have a tough life, who are vulnerable,
of course.
who definitely want, and they are the ones that, in the end of all this maelstrom, are the ones that are going to have a difficult time.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest point here, is that no one on this table here is transphobic.
No.
You know, I like I said, I grew up in the 80s when it was really unusual, and I had transgender girlfriends, and I saw what they went through to get to where they got. So the kind of ridiculing and the way it's become now is just doing them such an injustice.
Yeah, really is.
Right, Nigel, Arsenal players have been criticised for appearing to blank a young mascot. What happened?
Well, what they seem to have done is that a young girl wanted them to come and sign a T-shirt, and they did that. That was fine, but they didn't pay any attention to it at all. Some of them had earphones still on. They didn't interact with her, and there was then a lot of social media criticism saying, "Look, come on, at least pay attention to what's going on."
So somebody was filming it, were they? And it's got
online.
Yeah.
So I think probably we'd all agree on this one that this is really important to these kids. They are meeting their footballing heroes, and the least the hero can do
say hello. What's your name or something?
Yeah, or just pay attention.
Who's your favourite player?
Just to chat to them.
How long have you supported
absolutely.
Arsenal?
And this is what the players didn't do. Was kind of, this is part of our duty. We'll just do the signing, and that's
They were
it.
told to go in there by the corporate affairs PR guys who'd go and sign these to be some good pictures. But of course, being footballers, they did exactly what they were told and didn't use.
They did, and they left their earphones in while the pictures were being taken.
She was only about 9, wasn't she, the little one?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what her age was, but she was certainly very young.
Very young.
That's just rude, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you're a footballer.
Do you know what it is? It's just reflective of these spoilt brat footballers who are overpaid for doing a job and whinging, moaning, and don't even have the decency to take their earphones out and interact with a little girl who it's their hero. It's disgusting.
And the thing is, it's the moment she wants to talk about. Oh, here we are. You can see that now. Completely ignoring her.
And she's saying hello and thank you to them, and they're ignoring her.
Still ignoring her. And not even a single... They're not even looking at her. And look at her looking up at them.
Listening on the radio, the T-shirt is stretched across, I guess. 2 people are holding it. She's one of them. The players are signing it. She stood to the side of it.
And she's saying thank you to each one.
Not one of them said hello to her.
Yeah.
Oh.
And isn't it... It's a shocker, actually. She's not even 9, is she? She's about 7.
She looks younger. She does look younger.
At them. And so they've got their headphones in.
Couldn't they give her a hug?
Nobody's looking at her.
Yeah, just the whole team by the look of it, because even I know there's 11 players. That is pretty damn good when you see it.
I'm hoping this is a wake-up call. I'm hoping this is a wake-up call to footballers to stop behaving in such a disgustingly privileged way.
It's called a beautiful game. Again and again, Tonya,
Why?
you see it is not a beautiful game.
It is not beautiful.
It's greedy, grasping, all about money, all about them.
It's the bad character. It's the lack of humanity. There's a little girl there smiling and saying thank you. How can you not look in her face and say, are you OK? I'm happy to sign
and
this.
by the way, boys, the Lionesses do a lot better in international football tournaments than the boys' team. they not? Do they not?
Tonya, let's talk about cosmetic giants. Women are taking on American cosmetic giants, British women, claiming that there are risks associated with makeup.
Yes, it's what's happening is it's this whole thing. You know, Johnson & Johnson have taken away their baby talc, and it's about the talc that's in the makeup, and there's a whole load of women that are saying that it was the powder in their makeup that was giving them cancer.
Wow!
And it's looking more and more likely that it's true.
Because the Johnson & Johnson case was huge. It's cost them, I don't know the figure off the top of my head, but it's cost them several millions, probably hundreds of millions, because people were developing cervical cancer because they were using the talc for years.
Do you know what's so worrying about that time, going back to that, is that, you know, we were told, I remember the midwife saying to me, you know, you can put some talc on to dry the baby's bum. And my mum, you know, typical kind of Cypriot woman, would like, no, we don't do that. Why would you do that? Just dry the baby's bottom, don't be ridiculous. And so I didn't ever use it, because the guilt I would be feeling if I did use it on my child, on my baby, would be killing me. It would be killing me. And so, you know, that's the worst thing about it. So you go out, you've been advertised to by a cosmetic brand, you think you're going to make yourself look better, and you put something willingly on your face, and then you realise it's given you cancer. It's horrific.
Just shows mums always know best, you know.
They do, yeah.
Don't they?
The thing is, Nigel, what it makes me consider is the fact that we do willingly put products on our body, in our bodies, and we just trust that they're going to be safe, and that something as kind of iconic as Johnson & Johnson baby powder.
Yeah, that's the worrying bit. It's the fact it's actually a household name. You assume they know what they're doing.
We all grew up with it.
I mean, there's an awful lot you can buy on the internet, obviously, you know, a variety of medicines, whether it's makeup or whatever. I would rather go into a shop I trust and think, right, well, they at least know what they're doing. But when you hear a case like this, you begin to wonder, well, do they?
Yeah.
There should be massive fines for this. And this should not be allowed. They must do their research before they put products on the market for people, that's something that could give them cancer.
Yeah.
We know they get away with it. We know that they get away with it for years before they're taken to task.
One last story, Nigel. Britain's economy is showing signs of a quicker recovery than we thought possible.
Let's hope so, yeah. I mean, this is billed by the Daily Express as a good news story, which, if it's true, it certainly is. But I mean, there are some things we do know. We know that inflation will probably be around 3.5% by the end of the year.
That's a big drop.
That would be good. It doesn't mean that prices will go down. It just means they won't go up quite so fast.
Right, particularly food prices.
In the future, and food prices are going badly at the moment. I mean, the question really is what that would mean politically. I think that when everyone starts feeling better, that is when Rishi Sunak will call the next general election. If this prediction is right, I would think he'll try and go next spring.
You think so? You don't think October? You think he'd go in May?
I think that he will go at the point where people feel better about themselves, about the economy, about their personal finances. If this is true, and things look as they improve by the end of the year, spring's a good time.
And some people think the economic recovery could be running out of steam by the summer and the autumn, which case go early.
Yeah.
But I just want this to be reflected in people's interest rates, because this is the highest time of people foreclosing on banks taking in people's homes back. So this needs to be very, very quickly put into the interest rates.
I think the interest rates
will start falling. It worries me that a lot of banks were pushing people to set a fixed rate while it was up.
Of course they were.
That worries me.
And they're always quick to put them up, but you don't get your deposit rates going up anything like as quick, Tonya, on your deposits, do you?
Exactly.
In your building society accounts.
But do you agree with Nigel, Tonya, that people are going to start turning towards the Conservatives, who aren't doing well in the polls and haven't for a while, when they start to see it in their shopping trolley?
Yes. I think they will, because unfortunately Labour don't have a policy. They don't have anything apart from saying that, you know, 99.9% of women don't have penises.
So that told you, Nigel Nelson. Well put by Tonya.
I am not political. I keep saying that. I don't do one or the other.
If only they had a leader who wasn't boring.
We will have to continue this over muffins and coffee in just a moment. Thank you both. The show has flown by. Coming up next is GB News Live with Tom Harwood sitting in for Mark Longhurst. Hi, Tom. What have you got on the show today?
Oh, it is such a busy show today. The news agenda has been jam-packed with all of these developing and breaking stories this morning. First up, we've got the SNP turmoil. What on earth is going on in that party? What happened to £600,000? And why have there been more arrests? Beyond that, we're looking at Rishi Sunak, the new investigation from the Standards Commissioner in Parliament. Did he properly declare all of his financial interests. What's going on there? And also, is it similar to how Keir Starmer failed to declare 8 interests last year? Beyond that, we're looking at eco-terrorism. What on earth went on at the Snooker World Championship? There's a lot to get stuck into there. We'll be speaking to a senior activist from one of those rebellion groups. Beyond that, we've also finally got this machete ban. What is the government doing? They've promised to ban these things 4 times now. Catch it all after the weather from 12 till 3.
Hello there, welcome to a weather update from the Met Office. I'm Claire Nazir. Yesterday we saw temperatures in excess of 20 degrees Celsius towards the northwest of Scotland. A similar situation today, but cooler along the east coast, and the reason why. High pressure firmly in charge across Scandinavia, squeeze on the isobars towards the south, and this is where we're seeing a cooler breeze blowing over a cool North Sea, allowing temperatures to be lower here through Tuesday afternoon. With that, some cloud just drifts in, anywhere from East Anglia, South Midlands down towards central southern England, and a small chance of a shower. Elsewhere, it's a fine day, a dry one, sparkling blue sky and sunshine, and very warm. A